a certificate and CPD points will be awarded. Now, we all know that medical physics is an internationally recognized applied science in healthcare, which concern with the application of the principles, concepts, methods, and techniques of physics to medicine. Now, according to IFOM, medical physicists are postgraduate scientists who work in many different areas of healthcare, managing and delivering services and carrying out research and development. Now, in Malaysia, a medical physicist is recognized as allied health practitioner and is one of the professions regulated under Allied Health Profession Act, which was gazetted in the year 2016 and came into force on 1st July 2020. Now, I'm sure many of us here would like to know what this act is all about, the requirements, and the implications to our professions. Now, this morning, we have three distinguished speakers who can shed some light on the Allied Health Professions Act in Malaysia, and also to share the experience on medical physicist registrations from our neighboring country, Indonesia. We are privileged to have Mr. Saravanakumar Maniam from Malaysia Ministry of Health, Dr. Hafiz Muhammad Zim from Ministry of Science Malaysia, and Dr. Supriyanto Adjo Pawiro from the University of Indonesia as our panel speakers today. Now, to start off, allow me to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Saravanakumar Maniam. Now, Mr. Saravanakumar is serving as Principal Assistant Director at the Secretariat for Malaysian Allied Health Profession Council, Allied Health Sciences Division. He started his career in 2004 as Forensic Science Officer in Ministry of Health, after completed his degree in Forensic Science in USM. He possesses a master's degree as well in Criminal Justice and Analytical Chemistry and Instrumentation from Ministry of Malaya. Now, Mr. Kumar joined the Allied Health Sciences Division in 2015 and played a significant role in setting up a secretariat to oversee the establishments of Malaysian Allied Health Professions Council and related regulatory matters. Now, over the years, he has gained vast experience and knowledge with regards to the Allied Health Professions Act and policies on regulating allied health professionals' practices. He is also actively involved in presenting papers in meetings, seminars, and conferences on the matter related to regulating the allied health professionals locally and internationally. So, Mr. Kumar, thanks for being with us this morning. Now, although the Allied Health Professions Act 774 had been gazetted in 2016 and enforced last year, some of us are still new or not entirely clear about the Act. So maybe you can introduce to us this Act to all the viewers and its current status, Mr. Kumar.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairperson, Dr. Ng. Thank you for the kind introductions. As you have raised a very good question about the Act was gazetted in 2016, and there are a lot of information that people are waiting to know, and I will try my best to give some glimpse on that. Let me share my slide first. Okay. Good morning, and let me straight go to the presentation, just to give you an overview of what is Allied Health Profession Act is all about, and especially with regards to Malaysian, especially the medical physicists in Malaysia. And I also will touch with a bit about the updates so that people will know what is actually what are the steps are being done, and what are the processes being going on in order for us to make sure the act able to perform its function, which is to register the practitioners. Okay, before I go detail on that, I think I should give some kind of background. So until today, we don't have an act for allied health to be registered in Malaysia. Even though the act was gazetted, it's not the registration process is not still enforced. So, but looking at Malaysian scenario, we have other profession, health profession especially. For example, doctors, dentists, pharmacists has already been regulated for almost minimum 20 years ago. But allied health was not under that regime of regulation. We could tend to see that approximately 30,000 allied health professionals are employed within the Ministry of Health. And then they have around 30 type of profession within the Ministry of Health. But the data for the private sector, we couldn't have a very clear data because we don't have any registry to refer to. So looking at a lot of various issues, the government have decided to regulate 23 profession under the Allied Health Profession Act 2016. Even though the act was gazetted in 2016, various stages have been gone through to ensure that registration can start, but we are still in the process of making it materialize. Let me give you some insight into the act itself. Allied health is a multi-profession act. It's a new type of act where it governs a multiple profession within one council. If you refer to the world, I think only Singapore, Brunei, and also UK have the similar setting, whereas in Australia, they have an individual board looking after the and other countries, especially like neighboring country like in Philippines and so on. So they have a individual board, but ours is a multi-professional approach. Okay, at the moment, only optometrists and counselor, which is fall under the jurisdiction of Allied Health, are governed by their own act. But this act will be supposed to cover 23 professions, which is listed. And if you look into the reason why the act was established, because the main reason is, I think, which is similar to all the countries that already enforcing registration to the Allied Health, as especially the medical physicists, is first they want to make sure that professional possess education and experience at the minimal level competency, and they provide the service within their designated scope of practice, and also act in the ethical manner and bound by the code of ethics. These are the principle of so which is similar to us. And looking at, I'm just going to give you some idea that we are not the only act in the Malaysia. We have medical, dental nurses, midwife, pharmacists, and assistant medical officers, and optometrists before us. They have been regulating since almost 20 years, as I mentioned before. Ours is the new addition into the act, and the only difference between the act prior to Allied Health is they all govern the registration and the practicing certificate annually. But ours will be the new approach where it will be governed 2 years once, the biennial registration. That means registration will happen once, and then the practicing certificate will be a biennial process. So every 2 years only you need to renew once the registration starts. So this is a bit of a run through of what is the act all about. So any practitioner would like to refer to the act, you can just download by search in Google Allied Health Profession Act. You will get this act. I'm just putting a summary here to tell you there are a few parts in the act, which is the preliminary part. There's a part about the council itself and the functions, and also the part 3 will be looking into the allied health profession itself, and part 4 will be looking into the registration process, and part 5 will be in the disciplinary proceeding, and part 6 will be in the offenses. So a lot of people, practitioners, need to focus on these offenses. If you don't comply to the act, so you will be deemed to make offense against the acts, then penalty or action will be taken upon you. And we also have enforcement. This enforcement will be given a power to go and investigate any queries or any complaints and some general part. And in this act also have a first schedule and second schedule. So a lot of people need to refer, as a professional, they need to refer second schedule where to see whether their profession are listed or not. So this is the listing. And the first schedule is how the council is managed. Okay. In 2020, 1st of July, the act came to force. So what that means? That means is the council can be established. And apart from that, there's also another important element that need to focus is there are new definition for allied health practitioner based on the act. So the act actually have defined allied health profession and profession of allied health. So let me go deeper a bit on that. Allied health profession means the profession of allied health specified in section schedule and any activity relating to the prescribed by the regulation under the section 11. So that means this referring to the listing in second schedule, you will be deemed as allied health profession which require registration. But whereas profession of allied will be any profession which has direct and indirect effect of the patient care or on the health of individual or population. So from these two definitions, we can assume that not all allied health will be required to register. It depends on the council to decide who should be registered, and some will be remain outside the registration, because the purpose of registration is mostly we want to ensure safety and quality service to the patient. Sometimes some profession pose higher risk to the patient, so they need to be regulated by a statutory regulation. But some profession, they are not we deemed to be minimal risk to the society or to the patient. So they may not require registration. So, but this is depend on the council decision. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you a listed profession. We have 23 professions. So one of it is medical physicist, which is the participant today. I think mostly come from the medical physicist. Let's move on to what is the council will do. Okay, based on the act, when the act came to force, the Malaysian Allied Health Profession Council was established. The establishment council was done on the 6th of July, 9th of July, I'm mistaken, 9th of July. So we have now chairman. The chairman of the council will be Director General of Ministry of Health, and the deputy chairman will also play a role of registrar, will be the Director of Allied Health Sciences Division at Ministry of Health. So whoever occupy the seat of Director of Allied Health will be automatically become the deputy chairman and also will play the role of registrar, whereas the chairman will be the Director General. A secretary will be appointed among the registered practitioner from the Ministry of Health, will be appointed as a secretary, and 23 practitioner will be appointed as the council member. If the numbers increase, then the number of representative also will increase. Okay, so this is how the council will look like currently. But at the moment, we don't have a secretary, but we have an officer who are doing the job of a secretary because we don't have a registration yet. Okay, so this is the governance of our council. The council is still under the governance of the Ministry of Health. So the Division of Allied Sciences will become the caretaker of the council. The chairman and the deputy chairman and the member will be the council. And the council will be assisted by a secretariat, which is I'm now working here. So we will look into the registration process, the administration process, accreditation expertise, and disciplinary ethics processes. We also will be assisted by statutory committee, And this committee that the Act required to be set up, which is Expert Assess Committee, Investigating Committee, and Disciplinary Authority. So once the registration starts, another pillar of the governance will be the practitioners itself. Okay, so Malaysian Allied Health Profession Council will be having a few functions. Among the top of the function will be to register and issue certificate to the registered practitioner. So they will decide who can practice, who cannot practice based on the qualification or based on the requirement that is set by the council. And they also will determine the appropriate qualification for allied health. So after this, the council will decide which qualification will be recognized. Upon the recognition, if let's say the qualification is not recognized, then they are unable to practice in Malaysia. Okay, and they will also determine the prerequisite requirement if there is any, since this is a multi-profession council, so the needs of each profession will be differing, and then we need to cater to each profession. So some profession may need prerequisite requirements, some profession may not require. So that is the power is given to the council to decide on that. And beside that, the major task will be to regulate the practice of allied health and also to regulate the ethic and professional conduct. Beside that, the council also need to supervise matter relating to the training, competency, and profession development, and also to do any other things that is required by the Act or permitted by the Act. So this is the main function of the council. So the council cannot do more than what is required by the Act. Okay, so they are bound by this. Okay, for the registration and the practicing certificate, for Malaysian registration process will be divided into two, for Malaysian and for the non-Malaysian. For the Malaysian, it is a two-step process where they need to register first under Section 17, and also after registration, they can apply for practicing certificate, which is, this practicing certificate is renewable every 2 years once. So this is the payment that already been decided. So for application purposes, will be 50 and registration will be 100. So the registration will be one time. The practicing certificate will be 2 years once renewable. Okay, and then for the practicing certificate, the amount that will be imposed will be 200. Application will be 50. So altogether will be 250, and this 150 will be for the registration, and it is one-time process only. So that means once you get registered, then every 2 years you need to renew your practicing certificate. And here another thing we need to see is we didn't call the process as a licensing process, but in the Act it's mentioned as a certificate. But it is deemed as a licensing because it's based on the statutory body giving a license for them to allow to practice. So it is similar meaning with the licensing. And we also have an expert registration under Section 21 for the registered practitioners. For non-Malaysian, it's a one-step process where they only will be issued temporary practicing certificate for a period that is decided by the employer. That means as long the service is required, they will be given a temporary practicing certificate. Once their service is no more required, then the certificate won't be renewed. Okay, so this depends on the current needs of the country. Okay, so that's again, what will happen if, let's say, once you get registered, what will be the major impact on the professional? So once you are a registered practitioner, complaint can be made against the registered practitioner. So I'm just going to highlight here what are the circumstances that will make you liable for disciplinary actions as a practitioner. So if you, let's say, your contravention to any section of the Act, so definitely you will be liable for disciplinary action. Any act against the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct will lead to disciplinary action. Professional misconduct, poor professional performance, and information on fitness to practice. That means you may not able to practice efficiently. So if, let's say, people complain on that, action will be taken. a preliminary investigation will be done, and based on that, disciplinary action, whether needed or not, will be decided. And also information and any conviction on other offenses from other acts. So all these actions done by the practitioner will be subject to complaint, and later will be subjected to disciplinary actions. Okay. So what will happen? So if you are subjected to disciplinary action, so a complaint will be received by the investigating committee. So they will see the validity of the complaints on you, and based on the validity of the complaints, they will advise the council to set up a disciplinary authority to investigate further. So during the investigation, both parties will be called, and then both parties can put their arguments. And once all the information and the argument is being heard, the council, a disciplinary authority, can make recommendation to the council so that the council can make decision. So if the decision is made by the council, basically there's a three decision. One is they can reprimand. Second, they can suspend, and third, they can remove from the registry. What is the implication? If you are reprimanded, that means you are given like a warning to behave according to what is written in the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. If you are suspended, that means you are being punished for your action. You will be suspended minimum of 1 year, or it can go up to, depends on the council decision. And if you are removed from the register, that means you cannot practice anymore in the country. So based on that, okay. So this will be the disciplinary action, which is already already incorporated in the Act itself. So a little bit on the offenses, so that because this is the introduction, I think offenses very important for you all to know as a practitioner. You cannot, if you are caught making false claim in any advertisement, journal, article, pamphlet, website, or media commercial, you will be liable under Section 32 under advertisement. So make sure you are able to provide information which is evidence-based, and don't overcommit yourself by claiming things that you are not supposed to claim. Okay. And then under Section 33, restriction on the unregistered practitioner. So this is pertaining to the employer. If you want to employ, make sure you employ a registered practitioner once the registration started. I'm talking about after the registration start. If you employ a person or unregistered, the employer also will be liable for legal actions. And Section 34, I didn't mention, that is pertaining to how you obtain the registration. If you do fraud and so on, so you will be liable also. And make sure during the registration process, you provide accurate and what you call information which is correct. Don't send false information, or don't try to make a false declaration on that. Okay, and Section 35 will be talking about falsely personating or using holding as a registered practitioner, and Section 36 will be looking into employing who's not registered practitioner. Okay, little bit of updates. So that is all about the Act. I didn't want to mention deeper because you can, most of you can able to access it online, and then can have a run through of each section of the Act. So I'm just highlighting all the important part of the Act. And also, as updates, most of you already know the Act came to force on 1st of July. And we also have the Allied Health Profession Regulation pertaining to the fee. These are the two legislation is already out. Okay, and then on the registration part, registration is postponed. And the council, the first council that convened on, already convened for 3 times. So they have decided that there are still a few things need to be ironed out before we can start registration. And since the approach is to make sure all the 23 able to register, so registration is postponed prior to preparation towards setting the standards for registration and so on. So now at the moment we are focusing on the registration standard, and then registration system, online system, and online payment. So these are the issues that we need to still need time for us to set up. Once it's set up, then we can start online registration, and everybody able to start register. And from the council point of view, the updates are council established on the 9th of July, and until today they have met 3 times, and during the both 3 times they have discussed a lot of issues. They are trying to iron out all the issues as soon as possible, and to do that, the various committee has been formed to assist the council in preparation. And this committee are looking into the registration standard, looking into the ethical part, and also some of them are looking into the whether we need to amend the legislative or amend the second schedule. Okay, but our decision have been made. Council are in the midst of amending the second schedule, because they found that the schedule need to be amended to facilitate smooth transition during the registration. Okay, and I think the act was gazetted in 2000, but it was developed almost 10 years ago, so that the list of the profession was listed at that moment was not as comprehensive as what is now available in the country. So therefore, we need to amend the second schedule to reflect what is actually taking place in the country. So that is all from me for introduction and then updates and with regards to the Light Health Act.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, for a very thorough introduction to the Act. So we'll be discussing more stuff with you again later on the Act.
Okay.
So
yes,
yeah, let's move on to our second panelist this morning. So our second panelist is Dr. Hafiz Muhammad Zim. So let me just share my screen. So Dr. Hafiz obtained his PhD from the University of London, UK in 2012 after completing his research studies on real-time VMAT treatment verification at the Joint Department of Physics of the Royal Marsden Hospital and the Institute of Cancer Research, London. After that, he joined the Advanced Medical and Dental Institute, AMDI, of USM, as a senior lecturer in medical physics and also serving the radiotherapy and oncology unit. He is currently the Deputy Director, Academic and International of the Institute, and Dr. Hafiz is an editorial board member of the Ample online learning platform for the clinical training of medical physicists under IAEA. He is also the council member for the medical physicist profession in the Malaysian Allied Health Profession Council of the Ministry of Health, Malaysia. Thanks again, Dr. Hafiz, for joining us this morning. So Dr. Hafiz, as a council member of the Malaysian Allied Health Professions Council, representing us, the medical physicists in Malaysia, I believe you have been very much involved in the development of this act. So can you please describe to us, what does this act mean to us, and how does it implicate us as practicing medical physicists in Malaysia?
Right, okay. First of all, thanks Dr. Ng for having me today. Assalamualaikum and good morning all our audience today, as well as fellow panelists. And also I would like to thank Dr. Jimmy and the committee for organizing this timely forum, and also would like to congratulate the team as well as all supporting organizations for coming up with this great programs over this International Medical Physics Week 2021. And it shows our commitment to progress the medical physicists in Malaysia. So happy International Medical Physics to all here today. As what we've heard from Mr. Kumar on the Act 774 and the council that has been established to regulate the practice of allied health practitioner in Malaysia. So it has the main agenda of safety and well-being of the public, most importantly. So now we can see that the profession is at a historic juncture in which the profession will be formally recognized and protected as a health profession. And that will give us an opportunity to improve our profession further so that we can offer better quality of services through our roles as the medical physicist and have impact to patient health and well-being. So in order to answer Dr. Ung's question, so I've divided my presentation into 4 parts. So I'm going to cover the first 3 parts in this session, which is the introduction to medical physics and medical physicists for the benefit of all audience today, the current status in Malaysia, and also on Act 774 and MAHPC, which is the council that is related to the medical physicist profession. So, and then I'll cover the challenges and opportunities on the second part of this forum. So the introduction. So just to warm up, make sure everyone's still awake. So we'll start with an analogy using this new beautiful drawbridge in Terengganu in the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia. Medical physics is actually a bridge, you can say, or a combination between 2 different but related fields. So maybe the audience can type in what do you think of the 2 fields are before I reveal the answer. I can't actually see the chat somehow. Let me see. Okay, thanks for coming. Okay. Like just a few more seconds. I think most of the answers are correct. So I'm going to reveal the answer. So yeah, the 2 fields are applied physics and medicine. So the definition is medical physics is application of physics principles in medicine and healthcare for diagnosis and treatment of human disease. So usually it involves the use of the potentially harmful ionizing radiation. This includes the deadly high dose gamma or X-rays that we use to kill cancers in radiotherapy. So in terms of recognition, the medical physicist has been recognized under the International Labour Organization, which is under the United Nations since 2018. So if you can see here, in terms of the grouping, so it is placed under the physical sciences professions, under the physicist subgroups, and the medical physicist is an occupation classified under the subgroup of these physicists and astronomers. Okay. And in terms of the international recognitions, so we know the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the relevant agency, has published a document on the profession back in 2013. And we all know that Malaysia is a member state of IA, which has a statutory objective to accelerate and enlarge contribution of atomic energy to peace, health, and prosperity, including medical application. So this is also on top of their famous role as a nuclear watchdog of the United Nations to make sure that the technology not being used for military purposes. So the definition is in line with the nature of medical physics field, which is individual with education and specialist training in the concept and techniques of applying physics in medicine. And they should be clinically competent to practice in the medical physics field. Okay, so you can refer to this document published by IAA back in 2013. It's available on the website. And if you look at Malaysia, so we have yet actually formally used the designation as a medical physicist formally and clearly, because by designation in the public sectors, the medical physicists are known as the science officers. In the private sectors, they are referred as the medical physicists. And also in the university hospitals, those lecturers that is contributing to the university hospital, they are known as the university lecturer by designation, though they are also supporting the relevant departments for the medical physics services. In terms of the disciplines, so we can group them into 4. First is the radiation oncology, where the field is therapeutic medical physics. Next is radiology, which the field is diagnostic medical physics, nuclear medicine, nuclear medical physics, and also health physics, which involves the radiation protection and safety. So if you look at the roles, so you can see that the medical physicists work with the multidisciplinary team of the medical specialists, as well as our colleagues, medical radiation technologists. Okay? So we work with them in order to assess and treat illnesses and disability. So the medical specialists are typically the oncologists, the radiologists, nuclear medicine specialists, sometimes with neurologists and urologists as well, whereas the medical radiation technologists are the radiographer and the radiation therapist. So these are some illustrations on who are the people. The multidisciplinary team involves in, for example, in radiology department, we have the radiologists, the medical physicists in diagnostic imaging, as well as the radiographer. And in oncology, we have the oncologist, the radiation therapist, and as well as the medical physicist in radiation oncology. So the roles mainly is to protect the patient and healthcare workers from potential radiation hazards. This is led by the medical physicists. So they are also involved with the commissioning, calibration, safe operation, and quality assurance of imaging and radiotherapy system, as well as they are also involved with radiotherapy treatment planning for cancer treatment. They also okay, so so we know that improper use of radiation will contribute to potentially unnecessary radiation side effects and death. So even in country with very good monitoring in terms of radiation safety, it can happen. So mistakes can happen even in such situation, and also that can happen. So so we can see that the medical physicist has a very important role to ensure that the treatment and the diagnosis perform in a safe manner. So when we refer back to the IA document that has come up with the definition of what is medical physicist, also the document has set specific requirements for the qualification of the medical physicist. So they listed 3 main components for the academic and clinical training of a medical physicist. So the first is the university degree in physics or equivalent physical or engineering sciences. So if you look at the document, the definition is 2 years undergraduate topics in physics and mathematics. And then the postgraduate level education in medical physics, number 2. And after that is the clinical training for a period of not less than 2 years in one of the specialties in medical physics that I've mentioned earlier. So this should be in a form of structured residency program supervised by a senior. So the academic education program in physics and medical physics fundamentally prepares a student to enter a clinical training later under supervision before becoming an independent medical physicist. So it also provides the student with the basic knowledge needed to embark on a career in the regulatory industry, metrology, research and development, or innovation through research sectors, for example. So one of these broad foundation students are then able to build more advanced specialist studies in particular branches of medical physics depending on their preferences later. So that is why they have this framework, which is also in line with other countries in the world. So internationally, if you look at the Europe, I think it's a bit more, even a bit more stringent. They have 2 levels of education, the bachelor degree, master degrees, and then the clinical training, like what's stipulated in IA document, as well as they have a definition for the medical physics expert, which is based on the experience post clinical training once they become the independent medical physicist. And they also have certification framework, which I think we'll cover in details tomorrow in the forum session. Then if you look at closer to Malaysia, we have Australia. So Australia also have minimum postgraduate level education in their qualification framework for medical physicists. they also have the radiopharmaceutical scientists in their policy as well. In Indonesia, I'm sure we're going to hear more from Dr. Supriyanto later, on the certification framework. So their clinically qualified medical physicist also requires a master's degree in medical physics and to be deemed qualified medical physicist. So the next one is on the current status in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, there are an estimated of over 300 medical physicists currently in the workforce. And the latest national survey that covers 106 respondents here, we can see the gender, race and age distribution of the medical physicists in Malaysia. So this covers about 1/3 of the workforce. And we can see there are more female than male in Malaysia, which is also similar to the situation in many other countries in Asia. And almost 90% are between age 21 and 40 years old, which shows that the agility of the profession to grow further, since many are at the early or mid-level career. And we can see that the number has been steadily increasing since the year 2008, which is a good sign. And if we compare and benchmark the number to the global concentration of medical physicists, so this is actually a bit outdated data, but this is the best I could get from APM. So if you look at the number of medical physicists per million population, so we can calculate roughly we have 30 million population, and then if we have about 300 medical physicists, that is about 10 per million population. And we can see that Malaysia has a higher concentration than the global average, which is 2.7. And actually above the developing countries and just slightly below the developed countries. And this show that in terms of number, we are not so far behind developed countries, and that actually has established profession recognition and qualification framework. And in terms of where they work, majority are in the government sector. So even in our stats, we know that about 200 something science officers are in the public sectors. So you can see here, although this survey doesn't capture all, but it captures all the sectors quite well. And we can see that most of them are in the radiotherapy field. The next one is the diagnostic radiology. Also quite significant number in regulatory agency and also in nuclear medicine. So the rest that I mentioned was in education sector, which are mostly lecturers. And these are probably the people that works with the equipment vendors. And in terms of the qualification, so I mean, if you look at the qualification of each of the physicists that answered the survey, so we can see that about 75% or has a postgraduate degree, and about 10% of them has a PhD. And we can see that in Malaysia, this is in line for the master degree. We have two long established medical physics program. It has been established since the 90s. So these are the Master in Medical Physics in University Malaya, as well as Master of Science in Medical Physics in University Science Malaysia. And between these two programs, they provided for 76% of the country medical physics workforce. And another 5% coming from the Master of Science in Nuclear and Radiation Safety in UKM. And the rest are Masters by Research in Science and Engineering Sciences, in Physical Science and Engineering Sciences. And we look at the Bachelor Degree qualification. About more than half of them have a degree in physics and applied physics, And we also have quite significant number having degree in nuclear or radiation technology degree. So these are not necessarily physics degree, but they have specialized content that covers the application aspect of the nuclear and radiation technology. 4% of them have engineering degree and 1% did not disclose their degree. And in terms of the clinical training, the length of clinical training you can see varies between the fields, but it shows that it exists. Clinical training exists in Malaysia, and this is in line with the requirement for clinical training of the medical physicists on the job that upon hire. So although the current scheme is not formal or standardized, we can see that it is we have it in Malaysia. We also, I think I should also mention that we have the IA training scheme that is expanding to the second cohort now, though that has actually have more participants from the medical physicists. And in terms of a salary, which is also another important aspect, which how much the profession is getting. So we can see that majority, about 42% receiving salary per annum of less than 50,000 here in this group. And this group actually has a medium working year of 4 years and 3 years respectively. So 4 years for less than 25,000 and 3 years for 25 to 50,000. And we can see that if we compare this against other professions in Malaysia, so we don't want to look far, we just compare with the Malaysia. So we can see the radiographer, which has a dedicated grade, health grade U41, has a salary of per annum of about 29,000, so which is slightly above those lower group here, 25,000. And this salary is actually lower than the median salary in Malaysia with university level education, that is 47,000. Okay, so we know that though passion in physics and medicine should be the key drive, but I think monetary reward is also important. At least it should be above the average salary in Malaysia. Sorry. Putting the importance of the role of medical physicists in medical diagnosis and radiotherapy. Because from the survey, we can see that it is currently slightly lower. Like if you put the end bracket 50,000, this is lower than the median salary in Malaysia of with people with university level education. And if you look at the higher salary bracket here, between 75,000 to 150,000, then if we look at the median year of the working years for each of the group, depending on whether they are academic or lecturers, the private sector medical physicists or the public sector medical physicists, we can see that in terms of they have different median year of working. So meaning that it took longer for certain sector to achieve this salary bracket compared to the other sector. Okay. So the next is we will look into the ACT framework. We will just extend a bit on what Mr. Kumar has described earlier. So we know that the Act has been enforced in 1st July 2020. So, and in terms of the allied health professions being regulated, it also covers our colleagues in the departments, the radiographers and radiation therapists. Also, the allied health professionals like the dietitian, physiotherapists, clinical psychologists, medical lab scientists. So the council will act as the professional body. The MAHPC will be the professional body similar to the Malaysian Medical Council for the medical doctors. Whereas we have the medical physics organizations such as Perfect, MUM, Institute of Physics Malaysia, that can act as the professional organization or association of the profession, which is similar to the Malaysian Medical Association. And so far, the council has met regularly to prepare for the registration and implementation, and there have been various committees established under the council. Okay. So I think I should cover also what are the committees being established so we understand the framework better and how we can use it to actually improve our profession. So we have the Qualification Committee, the Joint Technical Committee with the MQA. We have the Ethics and Practice Committee. We have Fitness to Practice Committee. We also have Continuing Professional Development Committee. And we also have Expert Evaluation Committee, Investigating Committee, and Disciplinary Authority Committee that actually will look at the specific aspect in the Act that was covered by Mr. Kumar earlier. So we have a different section in the Act and different committee that will actually look at the particular aspects. For example, in order to make sure that the professions are being continuously having training. So there is a CPD committee looking after this in order for the profession to have a standardized education framework. There is this JTC committee with MPA that has been established looking into this. There's also the qualification committee that I will talk further on looking into what are the qualifications to be endorsed for each of the profession. Okay. So we have 3 professional organizations for medical physics in Malaysia. So depending on the committee, there will be appointment of the profession's representative, either from the academic or clinical sector, or both in each of these committee being established by the council. So first committee
Dr.
that
Hafiz,
I'm going to
sorry,
talk
Dr. Hafiz, can I request you to speed up this round, please, because due to the time constraint?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll cover this. Not much more slides.
All right, thank you.
So the qualification committee, this is the terms. So if you look after the qualification standard of the profession, and there are 2 sections. One is section 16 for the new physicists coming into that will be registered, and section 46 is for the physicists that are currently in the workforce. So these have 2 different sections. For those in the workforce will be under section 46, and new one will be under section 16. And so section 46 will register those currently in practice. So there are things to be considered looking at the current qualification of the medical physicists in the workforce. And if you look at some examples from other professions that are relatively more established, like for example, the dietitians. So they can stipulate for section 16 Bachelor of Dietetics because they have a program standard in MPA that actually clearly explain what the dietetics program should include in terms of the body of knowledge. And for section 46, they requires proof of practice in dietetics as well as Bachelor of Dietetics. And for the clinical psychologists, they set a Master of Clinical Psychologists, which is also defined well in their MPA program standard. And also, this is also defined in those currently in the workforce. This is for our colleague, diagnostic radiographer. So because they have upgraded their qualification requirement to a bachelor degree from diploma before, so they have stipulated a bachelor degree in section 16 for those new people joining the workforce, but those existing in the workforce will require either bachelor degree or diploma in radiography for those graduated older back in 2004 before. They also have a program standard well defined in the MQA. And so these are some of the references that the standards that I've mentioned earlier, if you want to actually look at. So we have at the moment the 2 MQA standard that is related to the profession are the program standard for medical and health sciences. So you can see most of the profession that are being regulated under DSACs have this program standard at MQA already, except for the medical physicists. And the psychology is in a different standard in psychology. And there are also the National Education Code Manual that define the fields of the degree at the MPA level. I think that's all from me. I'm going to cover the next one on challenges and opportunities in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hafiz, for enlightening us on the significance of this act on medical physics profession in Malaysia. Now, from the presentations by the two previous speakers, it is clear that the allied health profession was established to regulate certain allied health professions in this country, including medical physics. Now, as discussed before, this act involves the registration of practicing medical physicists in this country as part of the regulation. Now, one neighboring country that has established the registration of medical physicists is Indonesia. And this morning, we are privileged to have Dr. Supriyanto with us to share the experience of Indonesia in registration of medical physicists. Now, let me just share my screen here. So Dr. Supriyanto obtained his PhD from the Medical University of Vienna, Austria in 2011, and he's now a lecturer at the Department of Physics, University of Indonesia. Dr. Supriyanto holds numerous prominent positions in national and international medical physics association. He is currently the president of Indonesian Association of Physicists in Medicine and the General Secretary of Southeast Asia Federation Organization for Medical Physics, CFOM. Dr. Supriyanto is the national counterpart and coordinator for various IAEA projects in Indonesia, and he has published a total of 35 journal papers and proceedings related to medical physics. Now, thanks again, Dr. Supriyanto, for being with us this morning. And Dr. Supri, can you share with us the medical physics scenario in Indonesia and how is this profession being perceived, regulated, and registered? Dr. Supri?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. for the introduction, and thank you again for the organizing committee inviting me to share our experience for the medical physics registration in Indonesia. Introduce me, I'm the lecturer at the Department of Physics, as Dr. mentioned, and also the working with the Indonesian Association of Physicists in Medicine. This is outline for my talk. There's a little bit, I will talk about the radiation medicine facilities in Indonesia, some regulation about medical physics established in Indonesia, and also some information about the education and training, the professional scheme we developed in Indonesia, health professional registration, and also I provide you the last is the statistic medical physics in Indonesia. Yeah, this is the data from the Indonesian Radiation Oncology Society that this is the profile of the distribution of the radiotherapy center in Indonesia, and we have 34 provinces from the west, from Aceh to Papua, and we have 16 provinces already served with the radiotherapy center. We have the 45 center and around 90 radiotherapy machine with the 50 Linux, some cobalt and gamma knife and tomotherapy and brachy. Yeah, this we have some limited facility for the nuclear medicine around 17 center, and most of them in Java Islands, and we have some lacking it other part of Indonesia, and the new center will be in the Kalimantan, East Kalimantan. This will be the candidate for the new capital city. And this the data from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency that they already mapping for the all facilities, and also some medical physics already distributed in the province. And the data talk about the number of the medical physics, and also there's about the distribution, and also the ratio between the facility and the medical physics. So yeah, we have some challenging between the number of the medical physics and the facility for the diagnostic radiology, because this is I will mention what the kind of the regulation and how to implement, and how the challenge for us to develop it. And yeah, this is the data from the regulatory agency. This already divided for the CT, fluoro, and mammo. and there's some number for the license they already issue in the regulatory agency, and around 2,000 license already issue, and there's some more than 800 for the city. Floro is more than 400, and also Mamo around 200 something. So this the this facility already mapping in the nuclear regulatory agency. And yeah, I talk about the regulation. Actually, the medical physicist as the professional health is just established as a recognized by the Ministry of Health is on 2007 with the decree of the Ministry of Health, because in the government law in 1992 the medical physics is not have not been mentioned in this regulation in this government law. So that's why by the Ministry of Health Decree 2007, medical physicist is recognized as health professional in Indonesia. And regarding with the registration, actually before in 2010, some professional society, some professional health, they already established some registration, but by their own. So like the radiographers, the pharmacies, they have the registration by their own, by the some regulation by Minister of Health. But in 2010, Minister of Health decided to combine the all health professional except for the medical doctors, because they had their own the medical consult. So in 2012, medical physicists just started to registration to do the registration in Indonesia, because actually before we just recognized 2007 and 2012 we just starting with the registration. And yeah, some regulation established there for developing something probably in Malaysia is like Health Professional Council, and in Indonesia we starting with the Indonesian Health Professional Board, and we just regulated now. We developing the council with Health Professional Council, except of the medical doctors, but I mean, to combine all professional like the pharmacy, the fire, nurse, everything in the health professional council. I will talk a little bit in later. Yeah, there's some regulation. We in the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. This is based on government law 97, and they regulate some government regulation, and the Nuclear Regulatory Agency issued some regulation regulate for the diagnostic radiology, radiotherapy, and also nuclear medicine. They mention about the medical physicists there as the requirement to issue the license for the medical facility. This regulation starting in 2011, 2012, and 2013 for diagnostic, nuclear medicine, and radiotherapy. At the moment, the medical physicists, we still have the problem because we have the two professional society, and with some difficulties with the registering of the members, and we have some issue about the numbers. And but I will talk about the how we develop and how to solve this problem. And the Nuclear Regulatory Agency also just amendment this regulation. For the diagnostic, we have two regulation now. Is for the compliance testing for the radiology and diagnostic and interventional. This is regulate about the external audit for the diagnostic radiology, and also mention who can be the tester, medical physicists also there, and some regulated about complaint testing. But for the radio safety in diagnostic radiology, they also still mention the medical physicist is as the requirement for the issue for the license, and also regulate for the some the quality assurance document for the relicensing in the future. And we also have some regulation about the radio safety in in for the radiation protection officer, because this is connecting with some regulation from the Ministry of Health, that the ministry medical physicist also the radiation protection officer, but the certification for radiation safety officer is due by the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. Yeah, this is some historical from chart from our government. That 2007 the Minister of Health decree for the medical physics as health professional. 2008 the Ministry of Civil Servants. This for the government employee mentioned about how the career path for the medical physicists, because this important thing to be the some benchmark for the private, because in Indonesia we normally regulate for the government employee first, and the private will follow the regulation. And yeah, we amendment for the government law for the health so they already we already established the health professional, and medical physicists already mentioned in the government law. And the Ministry of Health issue for the standard practice for the medical physics in 2015, and they already and also Ministry of Health just issued last year about the professional standard for medical physicists, and also mentioned about the qualification of the medical physicists in Indonesia. Yeah, these three regulators play a role. That the Ministry of Education is about for the education, and also accreditation, and also some certification, collaboration with the professional society. The Ministry of Health in the middle is for the qualification for health professional, harmonization between the health professionals, something this overlapping duties, I think radiographer, radiotherapist, medical physicists, they have do work together to avoiding some overlapping the duty. And also the registration for the health professional, same thing in Malaysia, and working with the continuing professional development, and also re-registration. And from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency already mentioned about some licensing for the radiation equipment, regulate compliance testing, regulate the quality assurance program for radiation medical facility, and regulate the manage and also manage for the dose registration program in the nuclear regulatory agency. Yeah, this one the education and clinical training. Recently we have the 10 program for the BC in physics with some specialist, not specific, but the elective course in medical physics, and one bachelor engineering, nuclear engineering with elective in the medical physics. I just comply with the Ministry of Health regulation that the standard profession for the medical physics only allow the two graduated from physics or nuclear engineering. So besides the program, they cannot enter for the registration and also the practicing in Indonesia. And currently we have the one master medical physics in the University of Indonesia, 4 with the Master of Physics and elective course with the medical physics, on 3 PhD in physics with the elective course medical physics. And this is some scheme for the historical for the training, clinical training program we developed actually before 2000. Mostly the medical physics come from the radiographers. They upgraded the knowledge. And 2000 we already graduated some people from physics background, and after that they're doing for the master and also on-job training. During at the time is no clinical training established, and we have IA grant from 2007 to 2015 for the equipment, for the education, for sending the people to overseas for the learn about the clinical supervising and extra. And 2016 we piloting with the professional training from this from the associate medical physics, and also the specialist training for the SecVMP. So we trial and error, something like that. So we after that we decided in 2018 with the 2 scale. our consensus now that we only allow two graduate bachelor from the physics and also nuclear engineering. They have took professional training 6 to 12 months, and we call it we call it in Indonesia actually in English it is medical physicist, but we can call it the associate medical physicist. And this is already recognized by Ministry of Health in the Regulation 322 2020, and also Nuclear Regulatory Agency for licensing. But for the CQMP, we have the piloting for the IEA 2016. This should be graded for master degree, and also during at least 2 years clinical training, they will become from the clinically qualified medical physicist, or we call it the physical medical qualifikasi, this in Indonesian. But this still recognized by Nuclear Regulatory Agency for licensing for the equipment. But this is not still not recognized by Minister of Health, because Mr. Head mentioned we have to issue the associate medical physicist first before the specialist program. Yeah, we did in the University of Indonesia. We initiating for the associate medical physics training 2018. So before 2018, actually, most of the physicists is come to from the graduate. I mean, from the bachelor of the physics, they can go directly to the clinic before 2018. So they'll be practicing, most of them already practicing there. And some we have some discretion method before 2018. We started with the associate medical physics training, and we started with batch 1, and until now is batch 7. We already graduated almost 200 graduated, and 84% now already employed in the hospital. Because the problem is, based on the data from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, based on the calculation, the regulation is mandated that will be the need of the medical physics, mostly in diagnostic radiology. The total is we need around 1,500. So the problem is if we applying the qualification to the master degree or the clinical training with the specialist program, it will be a bottleneck for us. So that's why we decided into scale. We associate medical physicists is the bridge to be the probably the qualified medical physicist in the future. And then this is some mapping. I already some data for the placement in the diagnostic radiology, in the radiotherapy, and also nuclear medicine. Some of them also going for the education, in research, and also regulators. And most of the graduate from associate, we can see that most of the graduate training program goes to the diagnostic radiology, and some of them is in radiotherapy, but few people going to the nuclear medicine, because the nuclear medicine facility was very few in Indonesia. Yeah, this I present about the clinically qualified. We did the grandfathering 2015. We inviting Professor Kwan Hong Ong as the panelist for the panel for certification, and also Dr. Jerome from the Singapore to some for the grandfathering certification. At the time is 15 candidates, and only 12 passing the grandfathering certification. And these two started for the CQMP for the residency program in 2016. So that's why in 2016 in October we starting with the residence program. We actually 6 candidates enrolled and 1 in diagnostic radiology, but 1 withdraw from the process. And now already passed from the program is 5 medical physicists. And for the second batch, we have actually 6 candidates for the wrong, but during the process 6 withdrawal, because there's some going to the another facility, like change from ROM to nuclear medicine, and some is from the ROM to the diagnostic, something like that. So one is going to the education. So now it's left 3, and we have the final exam in Q3, probably in September 2021. And recently we a little bit changed for the residency program. We accepting each semester, and we limited number is 3, maximum 4, because we also limiting facility to have the clinical residency program, because in Indonesia the clinical residency program is treating a student, not as the employer. So this is some challenging for us. So that's why, because the demand of the CQMP now is increasing, because the facility, new facility, applying or establish the radiotherapy facility, the nuclear regulatory agency asked they to provide the CQMP for the high tech, like the FEMAT, MRT, and another advanced technique. They have provided the CQMP. So that's why now it's increasing. So this is also the challenge for us to provide the CQMP in the market. Yeah, this is the council we have. Actually, we have the 11th council in the Indonesian Health Professional Council. Except medical doctors is joined in this council. It's call it the and in medical physicists is together with the radiographers, radiotherapists, medical laboratory scientists, orthotic, prosthetic, and electromedics. In one cluster, call it the biomedical technique, something like that. We call it. So this council will have some scheme for approving the application from the registration, and some the general requirement for the national ID for the permanent, for the like in Malaysia for the non-permanent, or for the from the overseas they can apply, but we have some limitation and some regulation there. And also the application should be a member of the professional society, recognized, because we the Minister of Health only recognized one professional society. So that's why we unification the 2 professional society in 2015. And they also completing the training program, photograph, and also they have to sign for the medical physics conduct statement. And for the associate medical physics, they have graduated from the basic physics or basic in nuclear engineering. The other we cannot accept it. And completed professional training associate medical physics program. And for the CQMP, they have graduated for master degree in physics or in medical physics. They completed residency program in Rome, therapy, or nuclear medicine medical physics training program. And also for the re-registration, they have to complete it to collect 25 credit CPD for associate medical physics, and 50 credit for CQMP. And also they need the recommendation letter from the professional society to applying the re-registration. So this is the system we have for the CPD online. This website is maintained by Minister of Health, but organized by professional society. After they collect, they have some CPD activities they can put in the system, and then after 5 years, because the duration for the registration in Indonesia is for 5 years, and after 5 years they can collect 25 credit, and they can do for the applying for the recommendation letter for registration with the 50 credit for the associate and 50 credit for the CQMP. And they, after they have the recommendation letter, they can go for registration to the Minister of Health website. This is in the right side. This is for the registration, and this system is linked with the ID registration agency, like for ID, something like that, and also Minister of Education for the certificate, something like that. And this is a individual registration. They will be decided, probably like Hafiz will decide it, we can approve, but there is one consult in the biomedical techniques. And then they get the registration number for the medical physics, and they will mention as the associate medical physics or physical medic in Indonesia, or the physical medic berkualifikasi or SEQMP qualification, depend on the certificate proved by the registrar. And this is the
Sorry, Dr. Supri, can I request you to wrap up the discussion for this section?
Yeah, I think one minute will finish. And this is the registration we have in 2012 is 175, and 2000 is not many, to 14, and in 2017 this already have the new and re-registration for the medical physicists, and this is some scheme. And now we have 509 this in 2020, now probably is getting more. In our professional society, we have a membership 633, but this including some they just fresh graduate, and also lecturer, and also some regulators. But regulators, lecturer doesn't need for registration as the medical physicist in the Ministry of Health. And this also we advising the radiation protection officer, because this comply with the Ministry of Health regulation. And this is the profile for the medical physics in probably Dr. Hafiz already mentioned. And yeah, this is the issue that we have. Actually, in 2008, this small number, and because this is we still have two society, and 2015 we have unification, and this is the profile. The clinical medical physicists we have, and we have the issue now is the distribution in some part of Malaysia, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and Papua. The big demand of the associate in diagnostic radiology now is ratio is one physicist to be handled for 3 facilities, and some of them is 4. And demand of the SEQMP and the ROM is increasing. And this is some conclusion we have. There's some harmonization is very needed. Some associate medical physicists is solution for current situation, but the bridge to be qualified medical physicists in the future. And I already mentioned before. Okay, this the many people contribute in the development of medical physics in Indonesia, and also we also have this webinar in this afternoon. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Supri, for sharing the experience from your country regarding the recognition and registration of medical physicists. Now, there are a lot of questions in the Q&A tab, and let's probably just try to answer some of these questions. But before that, there are some questions on clinical training, which is really interesting. But as to my understanding, what have been presented just now, the registration currently is based on qualification-based framework. Now, perhaps Mr. Kumar, can you probably describe to us is there any limitation with regards to the qualification-based framework compared to competency-based framework?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ng. I think there's a clear difference between the qualification-based registration and the competency-based registration. And I think this is based on the country's policy and also the countries at which junctures they are. If let's say, if you compare to the developing country, definitely qualification-based registration will be a choice due to the fact the infrastructure to evaluate, to set up the competency assessment is not available. Most of the time, it's not available in the country. So qualification-based registration will be a choice where they focus more on the qualification, make sure they have enough minimum level of competency to start registration. And then during the process of conducting their services, they will gain experience and so on. But if you refer to the country which is developed country like US and Australia, they go for more competency-based registration, because the system is there. Once a person qualified from a university, the assessment system is decided by the professional themselves. They have a mechanism, they have an authority to look into the competency aspect. And once they have fulfilled the assessment, then they're allowed to register. So it depends on the country's current state or the policy. For Malaysia perspective, we follow the qualification-based registration, because due to the fact that we have a small number of allied health at the moment. We still need a lot of numbers to be in the practice, so that they can cater for the public. If let's say we start with a competency-based registration at the initial state, what will happen is the number of competent allied, especially medical physicists, will be very limited. That will go against the policy of a government to make sure that everybody able to get access to the service. So we need to look into we need to have a win-win situation where the patient also able to receive services. We don't want them to be at disadvantage. And I think we can go with the qualification-based registration, because we have a very good authority that look into the qualification in the universities, which is MQA. They have already set a very basic, fundamentally it is already established. And then I think our qualification framework is at par with a lot of established country. So in that sense, I think qualification-based registration will be the initial state. Once we have enough infrastructure available, expertise available, then we can move on to the competency-based registration.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for the answer. It looks like a qualification-based framework is probably the initial step for registering our medical physicists in the country. So Dr. Hafiz, can I ask your opinion? What are the challenges for registering medical physicists in this country based on the qualification-based framework? And can you also comment on the way forward, how the Allied Health Act can regulate as well as develop our profession in the future?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Ong, for the question. So I'm going to continue to answer the questions, my slides on challenges and opportunities from this act, looking at our current status that I've presented earlier in Malaysia. So let me go get the... Right, so now we can see the medical physicist profession in Malaysia is at a critical juncture in which our decision will impact the rate of the profession progression in Malaysia. So now we can ask ourselves whether we want to remain in the status quo, using the same thinking to solve the challenges that we are facing, because that might not leading to anywhere. At least if it's not for the profession, at least not for the health and safety of our patient, more importantly. Or we can also try to see beyond our current situation and try to start thinking steps to ensure progression of the field or profession in the future, like what's happening I think in Indonesia. So back to the qualification framework that we're talking about. So in the Act, we have two sections. One is for those new yet joining the workforce, and also those currently in the workforce. Okay. So for section 46, it's clear that, I mean, for the benefit of the Act, we want to actually register those currently in the workforce. So for section 46, it's clear to state, the Council has agreed to state that it requires proof of practice in medical physics from those currently in the workforce, and also just the degree in related fields, because we can see that based on the current workforce, not everybody has a master's degree. Although majority does have master's degree, but not all. So in order for us to absorb all into the workforce, we need to set to the minimum level of standard. But for section 16 here, we have a clean sheet. So we need to think about how we can progress the profession further based on examples of other profession in Malaysia as well as the rest of the world. And also we are not doing something new here, and it shouldn't be complicated as the mission to Mars. But we also have to put the main priority. What the main thing is to put the priority of the act is to protect the health and well-being of patients, and not protecting the status quo that we have here. So, I mean, when we examine the current qualification of the medical physicists in the workforce, so these are some of the most common ones in the workforce. I don't want to mention in terms of percentage how many are, but based on our studies, majority have the physics or applied physics degree, but we also have those coming from the radiation or nuclear technology degree. So when we look at this, we can see that there are variation in terms of the type of degree, even based on the classification of the degree. And when we know we shouldn't judge the book by its cover, it shouldn't be based on the name of the degree. So we look at the body of knowledge of the degree, and we analyze the component of the degree based on the amount of the fundamental physics component. This is separated to mathematics and computing, but these are combined into the fundamental physics and mathematics component as required by IEA in the first degree. We also have the professional medical physics component percentage, and also the clinical practice. So we can see here there are programs, there are pure physics or applied physics program that has sufficient fundamental physics knowledge, but maybe lacking a bit on the professional medical physics degree. But there are also other programs that does the opposite, in which covers very little fundamental physics, but covers more on the professional medical physics module and also the clinical training aspect. But I think, if you look at the overall, the majority of the degrees, they are mostly the pure and applied physics degree, and then according that is actually in line with IA requirements, and that can, the professional medical physics module can be supplemented when they actually take the masters in medical physics or master of science in medical physics in either USM or UM. These are just differences in the name, but when we look at the content of the two masters, they are very similar. And then the next one is beside the issues on the education background as well as the training background that are not harmonized, but at least we have majority with postgraduate degree, even though we don't have the MQA program standard yet, compared to other profession that is being regulated by the Act. We also have, for clinical training, we already have Ministry of Health existed credentialing pathway, in which that new hire will have to go through the clinical training when they actually join the workforce. We also have the Pioneer IEA clinical training scheme that is going on and actually getting more training into the scheme. So these are the part in which we think that can support the clinical training requirement when they actually being registered. Okay, so because like we discussed earlier, this is qualification-based framework, so we are not able to include this clinical training into the qualification requirement for the registration. Okay, and we also have this issue of the workforce structure, and where the main thing is on the departments in the Ministry of Health. So we acknowledge that they can be either in the hospital-based department or regulatory department, and they can be moved around between these two departments. And also we have those in the university hospitals that is not under Ministry of Health. We have medical physicists in the private hospitals, and we have the academic medical physicists in university hospital. So this variation in the workforce structure and also education and training background poses challenges in terms of how to harmonize this. And also, if you look at the qualification of other multidisciplinary team members in the department, so we can see that the doctors, the specialist doctors have the necessary qualification, which is a master's in either radiology or clinical oncology, depending on the specialties. And we know that our medical radiation technologist colleague now requires a degree in order for them to practice under this act. But our medical physicists is still have issues on in terms of harmonization of the qualification required to become a medical physicist. And also we can also look at, just now we look at ourselves, we look at our colleagues, and now we can also look at the field that we are playing our roles in. So we can see that now we have a lot of advances in the physics technology in the clinic. I mean, with the recent advances in the field, so we need to ask ourselves, are we able to provide the state-of-the-art service for the benefit of our patient with our current qualification framework that is not harmonized? And also, I mean, if we look at the patient perspective, is it fair to deny the patient at least the common advanced image-guided radiotherapy treatment technique because our skills limit us from doing that? So and also we're looking at the current education framework with some qualification having very little physics fundamental. The graduates later will be able to adapt their technical skills to provide safe particle accelerator-based radiotherapy that is mushrooming up now in the world, even in our neighboring countries. So I think those we need to consider in this juncture. And also, if you look at the future and we now, I think we can ask ourselves, how would the medical physicists fit into the changing scenario? And are we prepared to explore the newer technologies, or are we having the qualification for us to do that? And how about whether our curriculum is adapting to the changing needs of the field? Okay. So, but then we can also look at our strength. Like for example, we have established master qualification frameworks, in which that one of it is actually accredited by IPAM UK. So this is one way to harmonize the education of the medical physicists in this country through Section 16 for those new hire, so that we can have a harmonized qualification of the physicists in Malaysia. And already based on the demographic, 70% of the workforce has master qualification. And actually our annual intake, because we have many physicists now in the workforce, the annual intake of the physicists is actually over the supply of the master's graduate. So I mean, with this requirement of master qualification, so those we don't have shortage of graduates coming that we need to hire into the workforce based on the current annual intake. So it's typically around 30 new graduate every year, but the workforce usually requires less than 20 new hire every year. And also we can look at our other health profession that is being regulated, like clinical psychology, also setting up masters, have already managed to set up masters as their minimum qualification, and has the JPA approved has JPA approved the workforce framework, like I shown earlier, have different pay scales for those with master qualification. And in terms of the degree prerequisite for them to continue with their master's degree, we have over 20 degrees of physics from our local universities, and actually 53% of the workforce has this degree qualification. So if we can put this in a single slide, so we can see we have the main challenges in the current workforce structure that varies between sector and that is divisive within the public sector. We have the variation of education and training program in the workforce, and how we can use the Act as a tool to catalyze improvement with the support of the professional team members around the profession and the established framework. and how our status quo need to change to prepare us with what is already happening in the field and also coming in the future, and how hope we can clearly see the importance of harmonization and way forward, and the fact that we cannot simply use the international framework that's stipulated by IEA, because we already have 300 related posts as medical physicists in the profession, and we need to actually include them and regulate them through this act. So, and also being in this AHP framework as well, we can actually look at other established profession that provide us some reference on how to move forward within our national framework so that we can continue to grow. So this is my last slide. Sorry, it's a bit wordy, but I need to make sure that the message come across. So so we know that medical physics is a physics profession in healthcare. It requires fundamental knowledge in physics at degree level and specialized medical physics training at master level. And majority of those current in the workforce has this qualification, and those that doesn't have this qualification will be grandfathered and will be absorbed under the Act through Section 46. And it's also good to see that 90% of the workforce are younger generation, less than 40 years old, like I shown earlier in the slide, and has gone through on-job clinical training to a certain extent. Well-trained and educated medical physicists is required to ensure the safe and efficient use of radiation physics technology in diagnosis and treatment of diseases. And we know that improper use can determine public health and deadly. And establishment of minimum master qualification will provide growth of the profession and the field in Malaysia to catch up with the rest of the world, including neighboring countries. Also, standardization and harmonization of qualification should be tackled by the universities and through MQA program standard that is currently going in parallel. There should be also provision of transition phase for programs affected. So we are not going to deny the graduates from actually being qualified at the current stage. So there'll be a transition phase, of course. Improvement in the current public service structure can be justified following the upgrade in the qualification scheme that uplift all science officers as health professionals, so having proper academic qualification. So this would be a better justification for us to actually seek, for the profession to actually seek revision of the structure in the public service. And also recognition of the profession as a healthcare professional will bring the perks as one. So I mentioned the salary earlier. So when we are being recognized as healthcare profession, so hopefully development and training funds will be better salary, and also maybe critical allowance availability. And also last but not least, so the strong support from the medical physics professional organization. So ideally a strong organization. At the moment we have several, so we can look at how we can have actually a unified strong organization to make this juncture a successful turning point. That's all. Thank you, Dr.
Thanks very much, Dr. Hafiz, for a very complete explanation. Talking about growth, Dr. Supri, can you please share with us the growth of medical physics profession in your country, and is this profession highly recognized, and what catalyzed its development in Indonesia?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Oh. Yes, as I mentioned that actually the medical physics previously before the regulation by the Nuclear Regulatory Agency and also Ministry of Health, this actually just probably just in radiotherapy established. I mean, mostly because in the radiotherapy is in process of the planning and also for the clinical treatment. So that's why at the time is most stay in the radiotherapy department. But by the regulation, we working together with the people in the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. We actually was together at the time. We really support by the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. At the time, that's why they released the three main of the regulation in diagnostic, in radiotherapy, and also nuclear medicine. Actually, in radiotherapy probably is not a big challenge at the time, because most of the medical physics already there. But the more challenge at the time 2011 is really in diagnostic radiology, because they require the medical physicists in the process licensing, but the supply we still have the problem, because I think it is the same discussion in Dr. Kumar, also Dr. Hafiz, that it's a long process to be the base competency base at the time. So now also still in the process. So that's why we have some long process discussing, debating with the stakeholder. It's not easy. At the time, we debating for the master or bachelor. This is very debating, because if we took the master degree, there's some hospital they in the government sector, they have the post position for the master degree, but at the time is nobody can apply, because some people doing for the study, there's much going stay in Java, and the position in Sumatra is not easy. So that's why 2015 we have as I mentioned, this some revolution or our system that we unified, because two organization without we cannot work with everything. So that's why we decided to unify two organization. This is the big deal for us, and also big consensus. The consensus is we starting point or minimum qualification is the bachelor degree in physics or in nuclear engineering with the some proven of the clinical practice. So that's why 2015, 2018 we have some transition phase to do that. So after 2018 we mandatory without the certificate for the training, some training for the associate medical physicist, they can go to the registration and they can go to the job. Even for my student, all the students. So that's why this the harmonization, and also we do for the harmonization for the curriculum for the bachelor actually, because yeah, we work on this. So yeah, sometime that the syllabus we develop it something that quite similar with in the master degree, but we reduce with the qualification something the advanced technology we dedicated for the qualified and also master degree, but we divided in the qualification for the associate. They can do for the 3 specialists in diagnostic, radiotherapy, and nuclear medicine. I think correlate with the some one question I think in the chat box. Inform the associate, they can do for the after they can do for the specialist program. So this we did in Indonesia. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Dr. Supri. Now, we'll use the rest of our time, probably about 10 minutes, to answer some of the questions in the Q&A tab. There are quite a number of questions in the tab, and some of the questions have been answered in the chat box in the tab itself. So do check out the answers provided by our panelists. Now, the first question I have here is, where will the training for medical physicists take place? From what I see, the current clinical medical physicists do not have deep knowledge, which is or fundamental knowledge to train those trainees, which includes university lecturers who do not have much clinical knowledge as well. So yes, probably Dr. Hafiz, can you comment on this?
Oh, I think this is referring to, thanks Dr. Ong. This is referring to the training framework presented by Dr. Supri, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this the Malaysian is it's not proper to answer this question.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, because now I think the training framework now, the formal one is through IEA. So this is done at the hospital, private and public hospital. So, and I'm not sure about the other training framework. The one on the job training, part of the credentialing pathway for the Ministry of Health is also done in the public hospital. So it doesn't involve those not well trained, I believe. Or I got the question incorrectly, I'm not sure, but that's the current framework that we have in Malaysia.
All right. For the second question, when will start to implement? I suppose it's referring to the Act or registration of medical physicists, because it says that we haven't got any official letter from MOH for enforcement of registration, and what will be the impact if we do not register? Perhaps, Mr. Kumar, can you comment on this question?
Okay. I think they want to know where the money goes, right? Basically, this is an administration fee that will be imposed on the registrant. So once you apply, so the whole process will be considered that you are paying for that processing, and also to get the certificate itself. And if you compare to all the other councils in Malaysia, I think we put the minimal fee, which is for the processing and so on. I think other professions also are trying to increase the fee and so on, but we are starting with a very minimal fee. And for the government, it won't be any issue, because they can, I think they will be exempted. It is called exempted because it's actually government paying the government back, something kind of that scenario. When will be implemented? Okay. As you all know from my presentation, we said the Act was gazetted in 2016, enforced in 2020. Why we enforce the Act first is because we want to set up the council, because council is needed to make a lot of decision, because prior the Act, we can't make any decision, because the power is given only for the council. So once the council has convened, they have to look through the issues that are pertaining the registration. So they've decided to postpone the registration until further notification. So the further notification depends on how fast we can resolve the issues. Especially, we are looking into amending the Schedule 2 to make sure the listed profession are current, and or the name that they use in the listed is applicable internationally. Beside that, they also are trying to make sure we go for online registration. So online registration will help us a lot in cutting the time for registration, because comparing to other professions where they started as a single profession, where they can have a very limited number, then they can use the whole 1 year to register. We have 23 type of profession, and if the registration start as a manual, and I think it will take a longer time for us to complete the registration. So we will focus on the online registration. So once we have fulfilled all these issues, and the government, especially the council, will issue a public announcement on the date of registration start. So definitely at the moment, there's no official letter, because we already issue a press statement by the chairman of the council, which is the DG itself, Director General, which is the Tan Sri itself, have issue a letter saying that, issue a press statement stating that the registration has been postponed until a further notification. So with that, definitely we will inform all the related or affected participant in the country when the registration starts. And I think a lot of people are asking what will be the impact. So definitely the impact will be very, very much on you as a practitioner, because I think people are not so when the Act itself started, not many practitioners pay attention on the impact. Basically, the impact is, if you don't register, you cannot practice. So that's the biggest impact, that you cannot continue practicing. But saying that, you will be given a grace period. So it is called a transition or provisional period, where you will be given enough ample of time for you to apply and register yourself, get yourself registered. And we're also trying to come up with a fairer grandfathering clauses, where we will make sure that the current workforce not be at disadvantage when the registration starts. That means we will try to absorb every single practitioner who are able to prove that they've been practicing before the registration start. With that commitment from the council, I think the current workforce shouldn't be worried whether they will be left out for registration. Let's say let's say we started with a competency base, that might be a big problem. That's why qualification based registration will be a better option for us to start the ball rolling. And then setting the qualification will be depending on the professional themselves. They need to decide what will be the appropriate qualification and so on. Okay, that's all from my side.
Mr. Kumar, can I get you to answer the next question as well? There's a question on, is it compulsory to have indemnity insurance for medical physicists, like medical officer? Yeah.
Okay. If you, it's a good point that they raise. I thanks the participant actually pointing out this. At the moment, compulsory for indemnity is not an option by the council. That means council is not making it compulsory at the moment yet. Because if you see medical officer, they just started compulsory indemnity last year. They have been regulating medical officers since 1971. So only last year they started to make sure it become indemnity insurance become a compulsory. We need to see the ecosystem, whether the ecosystem able to, if let's say council decided to put the indemnity insurance as a requirement, where the industry able to provide enough indemnity insurance or fair insurance to the practitioner or not. So these are the issues that we need to clarify, where the council need to discuss with the insurance players and also the other authority and deciding to make it compulsory. But we encourage the practitioner to take, especially the one working in the private sectors, or they are working independently. They are the one who really need the indemnity. Why indemnity important in such a way is because let's say the moment you start register, you become a registered practitioner, you have a practicing certificate, you are liable for complaints. When you are liable for complaints, people can take action against you, can take legal action towards you. And if anything goes wrong, you have to face legal implication. So at that moment, what will happen is, if you don't have insurance covering you, you will not be able to defend yourself in the court of law because you can't afford to have a lawyer to represent you. Or if let's say you're found guilty, what will happen is you will be asked to pay a huge amount of penalties, where you end up become a bankruptcy because you're unable to pay. So these are the things that you need to think before you decided not to take insurance. So from a council point of view, at this moment, we are not making it compulsory. We will encourage you as a voluntary basis. But in future, if there's a need for the government to intervene and make it compulsory, they will do timely. Okay, thanks you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Kumar. All right, I think we are about time here. It's 12 p.m., so we have to end this forum. Thanks for all the questions, and for some of the answers, you can actually view the answers under the Q&A tab. Now, I would like to thank all our three panelists, Mr. Kumar, Dr. Hafiz, and Dr. Supri, for the very enlightening sharings and information on the allied health profession that has been implemented. Now, I'm sure all of us are now clearer on what the Act is all about, and to act accordingly to get ourselves registered to be able to practice as a medical physicist. I'd like to thank all the viewers out there. We have a strong participation of about 139 viewers for all the questions posed to our panelists as well. And do not forget that tomorrow will be having another interesting session at 9 a.m. on the International Medical Physics Certification Board IMPCB accreditation and certification with 4 renowned international speakers, which will be moderated by Dr. Ginny Wong. So please join us for the webinar tomorrow. And so last but not least, I wish to, sorry, I'll just stop sharing. So just wish everyone have a good day and stay safe.